listening to Big World at Work.
Kai's Inquisition, The Blight of Shadowfall. Episode 5. Written and read by Tawn Krakowski. At first, there was only darkness. Gradually, a silky wisp of odor, sharp and invigorating, slipped gently through Kai's mind, rousing her to the point where a sudden sting in her left cheek woke her completely. "Ow!" she complained, wincing as a much more potent pain radiated from the back of her head and burrowed deep into her temples. Kai groaned and ran her fingertips tenderly along her skull beneath her braids, not yet daring to open her eyes. The shriek of the ship reverberated in her ears, conjuring up grim memories of the wreck that had brought her to Naderu. Kai could almost feel her goddess scratching playfully at the hull, calling sailors to her icy bosom. "Finally! I've had this camphor under your nose forever!" A voice that could only belong to Pia grunted. "No more time for loafing, Kai. We've got to get off this ship." "Did you slap me?" Kai asked, bewildered. She slit her eyes open, and a frowning, clearly agitated Pia swam into view. "Yes, and if you don't get off your backside this instant, I'll do it again," the woman hissed, her purple eyes blazing. It was only then that the sounds of fighting caught Kai's attention, breathless grunts of exertion, chiming clangs of metal bashing ruthlessly against metal, hollow thumps of bodies meeting wooden floors. She struggled to her knees on the slippery, with stew, water, blood, or some combination thereof, and slightly canted floor of the ship's galley, and allowed Pia to help her to her feet. "What's happening?" she asked flatly. Without responding, Pia pulled a fragrant clover-green pouch from a sack at her side and proceeded to wave it over Kai's head, whispering rhythmically. After a moment, Kai felt as if a stopper had been pulled, allowing all the pain, confusion, and fatigue to swiftly drain from her body. She inhaled deeply, reveling in the sensation, and stood more confidently on the precarious surface. She swept her eyes over the shambles of the room, now occupied only by Pia and herself, listened as the sounds of battle rose and hushed chaotically from all directions, and scowled, saying only, "I need my weapons." "Jack's bringing them," Pia assured her, busily returning vials and pouches to her large purple satchel. As if on cue, the green woman skidded awkwardly into the room, Kai's trident, bow, quiver, and travel bag clutched in one gargantuan hand, and her blood-stained falchion in the other. "Are you two coming, or should I just kill them all myself?" With a savage grin, Jack twirled her wicked blade, splattering crimson droplets in an arc across the planks, and merrily tossed Kai's belongings at her. Once all three women were ready, they proceeded to slink through the ship, single file. Kai led the way with a nocked arrow, Pia followed with her quarterstaff held defensively, and Jack trailed, protecting their flank. They slowly crept down the passageway, which was tilted port and forward, with little difficulty in spite of the waning evening light and the occasional corpse crumpled in their path. Pia inspected each body they passed with the intent of offering healing or a merciful end to those still suffering, and if no life force remained, to identify the remains and harvest any objects that might be useful. The dead had no need of material possessions, and the divine scales favored the prepared. A hush settled over the ship after the group had only gone a short distance, allowing them to hear ragged breathing emanating from a shadowy nook between two of the few cannons the merchant vessel boasted. Kai drew her arrow back halfway and aimed it into the darkness as Pia moved in for a closer look. "Lorst!" Pia yelped once she recognized the first mate. She knelt beside his battered form and began to tend to as many wounds as best she could. Kai lowered her bow and moved to a place behind Pia, while Jack automatically turned to stand guard. The Inquisitor of Naderu cringed inwardly when she saw the broken man sprawled before her, his blood staining the wood an unnatural maroon. His sword arm hung by only a thin strap of flesh inches below the shoulder, and he had been slashed ruthlessly across the belly, allowing his intestines to burst forth like maggots, promising an excruciating and inevitable death. "There's nothing I can do," Pia told him softly. "I'm sorry." His lips trembled, trying to form words, but his body suddenly convulsed, pushing blood from his mouth instead. When the spasms quieted, he again attempted to speak. He was able to rasp, "Pirates! Took the captain! Must save!" before his eyes lost focus and his essence passed into the abyss. "Go with Naderu, Lorst, first mate of the ocean wanderer," Kai intoned solemnly. "May the divine scales judge you favorably." With shaking hands, Pia closed Lorst's eyelids, arranged his body into a more dignified pose, and reluctantly searched his clothing. "I promise to give you a proper funeral pyre if I can, Lorst. You were always kind to me." "We need to go," Jack growled. "It's too quiet. I don't like it." At that moment, the ship groaned and languidly rolled further port, while simultaneously pitching forward, causing the women to scramble to keep their balance. Jack was the first to recover, and sprinted for the stairs leading to the main deck. "Go!" Kai yelled to Pia. "Stay with Jack! I'm right behind you!" With the floor tilting crazily beneath their feet, the group emerged from the lower level unchallenged to find a scene not unlike the one they had witnessed below, empty of all save the dead. An outcropping of rock jutted from the ocean next to the listing ship, with another island looming a short swim behind it. There were no other vessels in view, except what looked to be the ocean wanderer's own longboat pulled up on the white sand of the main isle. "We've got to swim for the bigger island," Kai barked, doing her best to follow Jack and Pia closely without tumbling head over heels into their backs. "Speak for yourself," Pia answered, before leaping the few feet from the now more rapidly sinking stern to the tiny beach hugging the outcropping. By the time Kai reached her, she had raised her staff skyward and proceeded to chant in a strange, guttural language, with her face slack and purple irises rolled back until only the whites of her eyes could be seen. As soon as the spell had been cast, a dolphin emerged from the depths and glided into the shallows, squeaking jauntily at Pia as if greeting an old friend. Kai and Jack looked on in astonishment as Pia waded out to the creature, stroked its gleaming side, and hopped up behind its dorsal fin to ride its side saddle. "Enjoy your swim, ladies," she called, before directing the dolphin to ferry her across the strait. "Can I shoot her?" Kai asked Jack, only partially in jest. "Just in the arm?" Jack only sighed in response. She wordlessly secured her falchion into the scabbard strapped across her broad back and made her way into the water. She was heavy and weighed down by her chainmail and equipment, but she was also exceedingly strong, capable of traversing the strait with brute force and determination. After a moment, Kai stowed her own belongings and followed suit, leaving the doomed ocean wanderer and its slaughtered crew behind. Thankfully, the tropical water was warm and clear, making the crossing almost pleasant. As she swam, her head churned with questions, the most worrisome of which, if there were no other ships in the area, how did the pirates get aboard, and where did they go? Gnawed at her mind like a wolf at a mastodon bone. After pulling herself from the water onto the shore of the mother island and squeezing the excess seawater from her braids, Kai trudged over to join her companions as they stood staring into the beached longboat. She was not prepared to find Brivis, Chajek, and a still manacled halfling stowaway slumped at the bottom. "Are they alive?" Kai asked. "Yes," Pia answered, idly twisting her long and still dry blonde hair into a knot at the nape of her neck. "I found them here unconscious and was able to heal the few wounds they'd received. I was just about to wake them up." "Let Jack and I have a quick look around the area first," Kai advised, lifting her eyebrows at the orc. "I want to make sure we are safe before we hear the undoubtedly highly entertaining story of how that came to pass." "Do we have to wake Chajek at all?" Jack grumbled to Kai as they readied their weapons and walked toward the tree line. Him you can shoot.
Music by Kevin MacLeod.
You're listening to Big World Network.